here's the new laws. We're going to talk about the zero power property first. This one's the easier one of the two. So the negative exponent rule is more difficult, or more thinking sometimes, more actual like doing, but the zero power property is pretty straightforward. So I want you to go ahead and grab your calculator if you have one and put 5 to the 0 power in your calculator. Put 5 to the 0 power, put 7 to the 0 power, see what you get, okay? Now, you probably want to think that it's 0, but it's not. It's actually 1, okay? So x to the 0 equals 1. And you're like, why? Okay, I'm going to show you a quick trick really quick to show you why, but I will show at the end of the video how you also get that. Let's say, for example, I have x to the 5th divided by x to the 5th, right? That's technically 1. Like 3 over 3 is 1, so x to the 5th over x to the 5th is also 1. Well, let's use our quotient law here, our quotient rule. Well, if I subtract, right, I have 5 minus 5, that gives me 0, equals 1, okay? So again, that's why it's 1. I do want to mention something really quick. This is a common misconception that we've been having. So x to the first power, how many x's do you have? Well, you have 1x. But the problem is that when we get to x to the 0, you know it's 1, but for some reason we want to put 1x, okay? X to the 0 is just 1. It is the number 1. There's no more x. It is just a 1. So these are not the same thing, okay? So x to the 0 does not equal x. It just equals 1. Okay, so anything raised to the power of 0 is 1. All right? Now let's do some examples. We have 52 to the power of 0. Again, just going to be 1. All right? Now number 2, if you see it right away and you know it's 1, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and show you the work to get that. So I have a parenthesis, so I'm going to distribute my 0 to both things on the inside. So I'm going to do it to the first one. I have x, and then I need to do 2 times 0, which is 0. And then I need to do y, and 3 times 0, which is 0. Well, x to the 0 is 1, and y to the 0 is 1. And 1 times 1 is 1. Okay? So since there's a parenthesis around that entire term, and it's to the power of 0, that whole thing is just 1. Okay? Now number 3, notice how there's no parentheses around the whole thing. The 0 is just attached to the x, okay? That 0 exponent is just attached to the x. Now, if there were parentheses here, this whole thing would equal 1, okay? Because that 0 is going to be connected to all of the things inside. But that 0 is only attached to the x. So I still have a negative 5 here, but x to the 0 is actually positive 1, and so negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Okay? Next is number 4, and I'm going to ask you, does this 0 have anything to do with the b cubed? No, it doesn't. So you're not going to attach it to that. Okay? And then that means that this whole thing right here is going to equal what? 1. But whoops. It's going to equal 1, so then it's just b cubed. Okay? So just because you see an exponent of 0 does not mean everything crosses out and becomes 1. Just that one thing crosses out and becomes 1. Alright, negative exponent rule. Alright, this is the new one. This one's the one that we have a lot of trouble with. I will show you why in a second. At the very end, that made no sense. I will show you at the very end. But when you have something to the negative exponent, you're basically going to flip it to the other side of the fraction. So x over negative a is technically over 1, okay? So you're going to flip it to the denominator instead of keeping it in the numerator. And when you do that, the exponent becomes positive, okay? Now it's 1 over x to the a. Now you know how when we write equations, we have like y equals, let's say, x plus 3, okay? Sometimes we write our slope as 1 over 1x plus 3, or sometimes we write y equals 1x plus 3, right? But we don't really always write that 1 there. Well, there's technically a 1 in the front here, right? There's 1 times this. So that's why there's a 1 still in the top, because that 1 stays there. This one that was here in the top in the numerator is still going to be in the top of the denominator, okay? So let's do some quick examples up here so we can kind of get used to this. So let's say, for example, I have 3x to the negative 5, okay? Now, I can't have negative exponents. So for something to be considered simplified, you cannot have negative exponents. So for this is technically over 1, okay? Now, I can't have negative exponents, so I need to move something. I need to move just this x. Only this part is going to move to the bottom. The 3 will stay up there. And the reason why it stays up there is because there's not a negative exponent attached to it. So 3 will stay up there. And in the denominator, I just have 1 times x to the negative 5th. But I don't really want to write that 1, so it's just 3. Oh, my bad. It's going to be x to the positive 5. So I just write 3 over x positive 5, like that. Okay? So you're just moving whatever is negative, and you move it to the other side. Let's do another one. Let's say I have 3y over x to the negative 2. Okay? Well, I don't want to flip my entire fraction over. Like, I don't want to move the 2 to the top and 3y to the bottom. I just want to move what's negative. Well, my 3 and my y are fine the way they are. There's no negative exponents attached. But this has a negative exponent attached. So that's going to move up. That one needs to go up there. So I have 3y, and then I'm going to move that to the top. And when I move it up there, it's going to become positive. Okay? Now it's simplified. All right? So let's do some examples down here. Or let's finish the sentence. So exponents change signs when you move them from top to bottom, okay, or vice versa. Oops, there we go. Okay, so number 1, we have 2 to the negative 3. So again, if I have x to the negative 3, that's the same thing as 1 over x to the negative 3, okay? Now, I can't just write I don't know why I said x to the negative 3. It is x to the 3. I keep messing up. I am so sorry. I hope I'm not confusing you by doing that. But you're going to flip it to the bottom, but you're like, well, what's in the top? Well, remember, there's technically a 1 up here. We just don't write it. That's going to stay up there, okay? So here, I technically have a 1 in the front, so that's going to stay at the top. And then my 2 to the negative 3 is going to move to the bottom and become positive. And I know I can actually put 2 to the 3rd power in my calculator, so that's going to be 1 over 8. Okay? Moving on, I have x to the negative 4th. Again, there's technically a 1 in the front, so this will flip to the bottom, and this will become 1 over x to the positive 4. Okay? It does not matter where your negative is, you're just going to flip it to the other side. If it's in the bottom, you flip it to the top. If it's in the top, you flip it to the bottom. Number 3, I have x to the 4th and y to the negative 2. Now, my x to the 4th is already positive. I don't need to move it, so it's going to stay in the top. But my y to the negative 2 is going to move to my denominator because it is negative. Okay? So now it's simplified. You want to move that down. Number 4, this one actually you don't have to do this whole negative exponent thing if you can kind of just see it. You know that there's 3 x's in the top and 5 x's in the bottom. When you do that, when you write them all out and expand it and you cross everything out, how many x's are left? There's 2 left and they're in the bottom. So that leaves you with a 1 on top. So this is actually the easy way to do it. If you want to use the quotient law, you can. So that would be x and then 3 minus 5, which is negative 2. So I have x to the negative 2, which when I flip it is 1 over x squared. So again, you'll get the same answer. Okay? Moving on, I have x cubed over 5y to the negative 1. Again, the only thing that's wrong here is this negative exponent guy. So that's the only guy that's going to flip to the other side. So I have x cubed y to the positive 1. If you do not want to write the 1 there, I'm perfectly fine with that. And then you still have a 5 in the denominator. Okay? Number 6 is different. I have parentheses. So you need to distribute that exponent. Make sure you distribute it to everything. So you're going to distribute it in the numerator, and that's going to become x to the negative 4. You're going to distribute it to the denominator, and that's going to become y to the negative 8. Well, here I have a negative exponent in the top and a negative exponent in the bottom. So I need to move the x down, and I need to move the y up. So I'm going to have y to the 8th over x to the 4th. Okay? And number 7, 8x squared over x to the negative 3. again, I'm only going to move this and move that up there. So I have 8x squared and then x to the positive 3. I can combine the x's there because remember, simplified means one of each letter, one of each variable. So this is this is 8x to the 5th because I have 5 of those. Okay? It's technically over 1 if you want to write the 1 there, but you don't need to write that there. Alright, so here's the purpose of this. We need to be able to combine all these rules that we just learned. Really, you only learned 2 because the other 3 were review. The goal is to be able to combine everything and then apply it. So, and if you're thinking, how is this useful in your real life? Well, this is just like the steps. Like, these are just the basic skills that you need, and people use this in engineering and physics to find trajectories for things. So this is kind of setting us up for using quadratic functions, which is something that is used very common in daily life. It's used in sports. It's used in science with like rockets and missiles. So it is relevant. It's just like the small skills that are used to do those mathematical calculations. Okay. So number 1, we're going to combine all these steps. Now, obviously, some of these look really overwhelming, but you want to just take it one step at a time. So, what I want to do first is I'm going to distribute this 2 to everything in this parentheses. So, I have y squared, I have x to the negative 6, and then I have 3 squared. Okay? Now remember, 3 squared is 9, and so I'm going to copy those down, and then I'm going to bring this down here, times 2x to the 9th. Okay? So you want to simplify one thing at a time. Now I know I can do 9 times 2. That's going to give me 18. And then I have and then I also have x to the negative 6 and x to the 9th. That could be x to the positive 3 because negative 6 plus 9 is positive 3. And then the y squared is all by itself. Can't be simplified or combined with anything else, so that's just going to stay tacked on at the end. Okay? Number 2. Okay, so there's 2 things you could do, or one of 2 things that you could do here to start off. I'm going to go ahead and divide 10 divided by 5. I know that's positive 2 over 1. You don't have to write the 1, so I'm just going to write the 2 at the top. Okay, and I notice I have negative exponents here, so I'm going to go ahead and flip them. So I'm going to move the x to the negative 1 to the top, and then x to the negative 2 to the bottom. So I'm going to have 2x to the first over x squared. Okay. Now, let's see here. If we expanded x to the 1, if we have x to the 1 on top, and then we have 2 x's at the bottom, and I cross it out, how many do I have left? I have 1 left. Okay? And it's in the bottom. Okay. Number 3. Let's go ahead and distribute that exponent of 4 to both terms. Negative 2. Make sure when you plug this in the calculator, you put it in parentheses, okay? When there's negatives involved, it's a tricky world. Okay. And then we have x to the 4th, and that's going to be times x, y to the 0. Okay? Negative 2 to the 4th power, if you do it with parentheses, is going to give you positive 16, because negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 16. And then y to the 0 is just 1, right? So this is technically 1. And when I combine it here, I'm not going to write that 1 because what? 16 times 1 is just 16. So I'm just going to write the 16 there. And then I know x to the 4th times x is x to the 5th. And then I'm done. Number 4 looks really scary, but I promise it's not that scary because you just want to take it one step at a time. So just look at the numerator for now. So I'm actually even going to just copy down the denominator. I'm not going to mess with it yet. Okay, just look at the top. I know I can combine my numbers. I know 2 times 4 is going to give me a positive 8. I know that x cubed times x is going to give me 4 x's, my bad. X cubed times x, so that's 4 of them. And then I know that y times y squared is going to be y cubed. Okay? So I've combined all of those. Now I can simplify. Well, 8 divided by 12 can be simplified as a fraction. That's going to give me 2/3. Okay? Now, x to the 4th divided by x to the 4th. That's just 1. So these actually cancel. So I'm not even going to write those out. Okay? and then I have y cubed over y to the negative 4. I'm going to keep the y cubed in the numerator, but I'm going to move that y negative 4 up soon because it's negative. So in order to make it positive, I need to move it up. So let's do this in green. So I'm going to move this, I'm going to move it up here. So I have 2y cubed y to the 4th over 3. And that's going to be 2y to the 7th over 3. Okay? Okay, we have 2 left, and then we'll talk about why certain rules are what they are. Now, 5 looks a little scary because our exponent here is a fraction, but you treat it just the same. You're still going to distribute. So, let's distribute. Let's do the first one first. We have 16 to the 1/2. Okay? We have x, and then we need to do 4 times 1/2, which gives us a positive 2. And then we have negative 8 times 1/2, which is negative 4. And that's all over 4x to the negative 2y. Now, put 16 to the 1/2 in your calculator. Okay? Now, you don't know it yet, but you'll learn it in geometry, I think, or maybe algebra 2, that something raised to the 1/2 is just finding the square root. So if you put that in the calculator, you're going to get 4. Okay? Okay? Now, I know here that my 4 divided by 4, that's going to cancel. And you're like, oh, well, I can cancel the x squared over x to the negative 2. Now, that cannot cancel because those exponents are not exactly the same. Okay? So, let's do some adjusting here. I'm going to go ahead and move my, well, let me rewrite this down first. X, negative 2, y. I'm going to move the y to the negative 4 to the bottom. I'm going to move this down so it can become positive. So I have x squared, and then I have x to the negative 2, y to the negative 4. Okay? Now, oh, not negative 4, my bad. I apologize. That should be y to the positive 4. Because it's because it was negative in the top and then we moved it. Alright, so I can combine these. That's going to give me x squared over x to the negative 2, y to the 5th. And then last step here, that's going to be, I need to move the x negative 2 to the top. So I have x squared times x squared over y to the 5th. That's x to the 4th over y to the 5th. Okay, that was a lot of work, but we made it. I think that is correct. I hope I didn't make a mistake somewhere. Let me check my work really quick. Yep, I believe I did that one correctly. All right, number 6 copied funny. So just to let you know, this is a z to the cubed. The exponent here is a negative 2. That's a z, and then that's a 2. Okay. Okay. Remember, this 2 is not attached to the z cubed in the front, so that z cubed I'm just going to leave alone, okay? Z cubed is technically over 1. Every number is technically over 1, so we're just going to write it like that. And then let's go ahead and simplify this fraction here. Now, I need to distribute every single thing, so I have that here. So I have x to the negative 2 squared, so that's going to be x to the negative 4 because you're multiplying. And then we have y to the 8th and z squared. Okay? Now you're going to distribute that 2 to the bottom as well. So you have 3 squared, which is 9, and then you have y squared. Okay? Now since the parentheses are gone, I can go ahead and multiply this in here. Okay? So that's just going to give me z cubed times x to the negative 4, y to the 8th, z squared, all over 9y squared. Okay? All I've done is just move the z cubed in. I've copied everything else down. Alright, so here, let's look at the numerator, see if I can simplify that. I know I can combine these z's here, so let's go ahead and do that. We have z to the 5th, x to the negative 4, y to the 8th, all over 9y squared. Okay. Let's go ahead and simplify. Let's see if we can simplify these y's here. I have y to the 8th in the top, y to the 9th in the bottom. So that's going to be 6 y's left, and they're all in the numerator, which is up here. And then that's 9, okay? And then the last step we have is that we still have a negative exponent here. So you want to move that guy down. So you have z to the 5th, y to the 6th all over 9x to the 4th. Okay? Now, these two require some work. It's not really possible for you to do it at this level all in your head. Okay? So I do need to see some work on these. You can take as many steps as you need. There's no rush, honestly. Alright, and then last, why does x to the 0 equal 1? And why does x to the negative exponent equal 1 over x to that exponent? Well, let's do some experimenting here, or let's do some discovery work. 2 to the 4th is 16. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 to the cubed is 8. 2 squared is 4. And 2 to the 1st is 2. Now, what's happening as I'm going down? I'm dividing by 2. You're dividing by that base. So if it was 3 to the power of something, you're dividing by 3 each time. So let's test it. So I'm going 4, 3, 2, 1. So I have 2 to the 0 here. Let's do it. 2 divided by 2 is going to give me 1. So 2 to the 0 is 1. That's correct. Let's keep going down another number. 1 divided by 2 is what? 1/2. 0.5. Let's do one more. 2 to the negative 2, 1/2 divided by 2 is going to be 1/4. Okay? So, we just learned this. If we have a negative exponent like this, we know that's going to be 1 over 2 to the 1st power. And this is going to be 1 over 2 squared, which is 1 over 4, right? Well, that's exactly what we have over there. So when you have a negative exponent, what it's saying is that you're taking 2, and instead of multiplying it by itself, you're dividing it by itself. That's what's actually happening.